Lyra walked alone across the wide metal bridge of Varix 9, her small footsteps echoing against the cold surface. The sky above her was a deep green haze, lit only by distant star lanes that passed near the planet. Her long coat wrapped around her like a shield, hiding most of her slim body while a hood stayed low over her face. She usually kept herself covered, but today the wind pushed her hood back a little, revealing the long scar that cut across her left cheek and down to her chin. The scar was old. The pain had faded long ago, but the memory remained sharp. Every time she walked through the city, she felt it in the way other people looked at her. Some stared, some turned away quickly, and others pretended she wasn't there at all. On Varix 9, physical perfection was seen as a sign of inner balance, and to them, her scar meant something was wrong with her mind or her spirit. Lyra knew that wasn't true, but the world seemed unwilling to believe otherwise. Today, like every day, she kept her eyes low. She never wanted to make anyone uncomfortable. But the truth was that they were the ones who made her uncomfortable. She had lived with this feeling since she was a child. She had learned to hide her emotions, stay quiet, move gently, and never expect kindness. The city around her was loud and bright. Tall silver buildings rose into the sky, glowing with neon lights. Flying transports moved across the air like tiny insects. Everywhere she looked, people were in groups laughing, trading, discussing, but none of them ever came close to her. She walked through a crowded market once, and even though there were hundreds of people, she had never felt more alone. She was used to it. That was what she always told herself. She didn't cry anymore, and she didn't try to change anything. She just lived inside her own small world, reading old books and learning from the few stories that comforted her, especially stories about humans. Humans, according to what she had read, were strange but admirable. They valued bravery, kindness, and determination more than surface beauty. They accepted scars as proof of survival, not as shame. Sometimes she wondered if such people truly existed, or if they were only characters in dusty, old documents. She had never seen a human in real life. No human ships ever visited her world. Her people rarely traveled outside their region of space. She had accepted long ago that anything special or gentle from outside her life would probably never reach her. That belief changed on the day the Earth diplomatic ship arrived. It happened in the early hour cycle, when the city buzzed with unusual excitement. The government had announced that humans were visiting for the first time in centuries. Workers and traders gathered in the main plaza to see the newcomers. The mayor gave long speeches about cooperation and shared knowledge. Everyone wanted to see how humans looked and behaved. Everyone except Lyra. She stayed far from the main landing area, sitting quietly near an old cargo yard on the outer ring of the city. She listened to the distant noise of cheering crowds, but didn't get up to join them. The people around her would only push her away or stare. She knew how it would go. Instead, she preferred the quiet. The yard was usually empty, except for a few rusting containers and a small service building. She could sit there without fear of being judged, but that was where her world shifted. She heard a loud humming sound, and when she looked up, she saw a small human landing drone descending toward the yard. Its engine sputtered and flickered, making strange clicking noises. Something was wrong with it. She stood up slightly, curious, but not brave enough to move closer. The drone landed awkwardly, its right stabilizer scraping against the metal ground. Sparks shot up. The hatch opened, and a figure jumped out, tall, strong-looking, wrapped in a dark work jacket. A human. He pulled off his helmet, revealing dark hair, tan skin, and warm brown eyes. He muttered something in frustration, then crouched beside the broken stabilizer, inspecting it carefully. Lyra froze. She had never seen a human in real life before, and now there was one only a few steps away from her alone, repairing a drone, completely unaware that she was watching. She didn't know what to do. Her hood fell back again, revealing more of her face, and she quickly pulled it forward. She didn't want him to see her scar. She was used to Varix 9 citizens staring at it. But she didn't know how a human would react. What if he looked at her the same way they did? She tried to step back quietly, but her foot hit a loose metal sheet. making a loud clang. The human instantly turned toward her. His eyes widened not in fear or disgust, but in surprise, like he didn't expect anyone to be there. For a moment, no one moved. Then he stood up, brushed dirt off his hands, and walked slowly toward her. Lyra's heart raced. She felt exposed, like the entire sky was staring at her. She lowered her head and hid behind her hood. She wanted to disappear, but the human stopped at a safe, respectful distance and spoke in a calm, friendly voice. "Hey, sorry if I scared you. Are you okay?" Lyra blinked. The tone confused her. There was no hesitation, no coldness. He sounded kind. She tried to answer, but her voice came out rough and quiet. "Yes, I am fine." He smiled a little. "Good. I wasn't expecting anyone out here. The crowd's all back at the main plaza." He glanced at her hooded face, not with discomfort, but with curiosity. "Do you live around here?" Lyra hesitated. She was not used to conversations. "I work nearby," she lied softly. In truth, she simply hid nearby. The human nodded. "Name's Jacob. Jacob Hale, engineer for the Earth team." He tapped the broken drone behind him. "This little thing gave up on me." Lyra looked at the drone again. Her species could sense mechanical tensions through vibrations, and she could tell the stabilizer was overheating. "The coolant pipe is damaged," she said quietly. "If you move it fast, it will break." Jacob blinked, surprised. "You can tell that from here?" She nodded slowly, keeping her head down. "I can feel the vibration." He stared at her again, but this time with respect. "That's impressive. You just saved me a lot of trouble." Her heart trembled. No one on Varex 9 ever praised her for anything. Most people barely spoke to her at all. Jacob crouched again, checking the drone, and said, "Do you want to come closer? Maybe you can tell me if anything else is wrong." Lyra took a tiny step forward, then stopped. You do not want me to leave?" "Why would I want that?" he asked genuinely. She had no answer. She wasn't used to anyone wanting her near. She slowly walked toward the drone. Jacob stepped aside to give her space, as if he knew she needed it. She crouched to examine the machine. Her hands shook slightly, not from fear of the drone, but from the strange, soft warmth she felt because of him. Jacob watched her quietly. She expected him to stare at her scar when the hood slipped again. But he didn't. He looked only at her eyes, and at the drone. She fixed the loose coolant tube in seconds. Jacob tested the stabilizer again, and the vibration smoothed instantly. "Wow," he said, impressed. "You're amazing." The word hit her harder than a shockwave. Amazing? No one on her planet had ever called her that. People called her many things. Broken, unstable, unpleasant, but never amazing. She tried to turn away, but Jacob gently touched her arm to get her attention. His touch was warm and respectful, not forceful. "Thank you," he said softly. "Really?" Lyra looked up at him for the first time. Their eyes met. In his gaze, she saw no judgment, no fear, no disgust, only light. Something inside her chest moved like a sleeping star waking up. She didn't understand the feeling. She only knew that in all her life, she had never been seen like this. Jacob smiled again and said, "If you ever want to talk, or just help me with repairs, I'll be working here for the next few cycles. I'd like to see you again." Lyra felt her throat tighten. No one had ever said they wanted to see her again. She whispered, "Maybe. I will come." Jacob nodded and returned to his drone. Lyra walked away slowly. But every step felt heavy and strange. A warm energy spread through her heart. Something she had never felt before. A human had looked at her like she was a person worth knowing. A human had smiled at her without fear. A human had spoken to her gently, and she didn't know why. But she felt something inside her shift, as if she had fallen into a new world the moment he looked at her. A world where she wasn't shunned. A world where she mattered. And for the first time in her life, Lyra found herself wanting the next day to come quickly, just so she could see him again. Lyra woke up early the next cycle, long before the city lights had fully brightened. She lay still in her small room, staring at the ceiling, feeling a strange flutter in her chest. She did not know if it was fear, excitement, or something new that she had never felt before. Her hands were slightly shaking, but not from cold. It was because she remembered Jacob's eyes, warm, calm, and honest. No one had ever looked at her like that. For many cycles, she woke each morning with the same heavy feeling, preparing for another day of silence and avoidance. But today was different. Today she found herself wanting to leave her room. She wanted to step outside, breathe the sharp air of Varex 9, and go back to the cargo yard where she knew he would be working. She tried to move slowly, carefully, because she did not trust this sudden new desire. She pulled her hood over her head and wrapped her long coat around her body. She looked in the mirror for only a moment. The scar, pale and deep, ran along her cheek as always. But for the first time, she did not feel ashamed. She only wondered what Jacob saw when he looked at her. Did he really not notice it? Or did he just not care? She stepped outside into the early cycle light. The city was quieter at this time, with only a few workers moving through the streets. She kept her pace steady and her eyes low, but there was a small, soft spark inside her that pushed her forward. When she reached the cargo yard, she stopped near the entrance. Jacob was already there, kneeling beside the drone she had helped him repair. He was humming something. A small melody that floated in the air. It sounded gentle and simple, very different from the sharp, metallic noises of Varex 9. He noticed her almost instantly. He looked up and smiled, not a polite smile, not a forced one, but a real one that reached his eyes. "Hey, you came." Lyra felt her heart warm at those words. She nodded slowly. "I said, maybe I would. And I'm glad the maybe turned into yes," Jacob replied cheerfully. He stood up, brushing his hands on his jacket. Lyra stood a few steps away from him, unsure how close she was allowed to be. She waited for him to tell her where she should stand, but he only gestured beside him. "Come closer. I'm checking the engine lines today. I could use someone with your sense for vibrations." Lyra stepped forward, still nervous but determined. She knelt beside him, her movements careful and quiet. Jacob explained the parts of the drone, showing her how the stabilizer connected to the cooling system and how the engine pulses worked. She listened closely, absorbing every detail. She was good at understanding mechanics, even though no one on her planet ever gave her a chance to show it. After a while, Jacob watched her as she adjusted a small valve. "You know," he said lightly, "you really have a talent for this." Lyra's fingers froze. "I do not know about that." "I do," he insisted softly. "You see things quickly. You understand things fast. That's a talent." Lyra lowered her eyes. "People here do not think that." Jacob raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" She hesitated before answering. "Because they think I am unstable. Because of my scar." Her voice trembled, but only a little. "They think it shows something wrong with my mind." Jacob blinked, confused and slightly frustrated. "A scar says nothing about your mind. It only shows something happened to your body. Humans treat scars like memories. Proof that someone lived through something difficult." Lyra looked up, her eyes wide with wonder. "Really?" "Absolutely," Jacob said. "Back home, people sometimes take pride in their scars." Over then, Lyra had never imagined such a thing. She had grown up in a world where scars were symbols of damage and fear. To hear that humans saw them as signs of courage made her heart feel strangely light. She placed her hand gently on the drone's engine, focusing on the vibrations. Jacob watched her work in silence, giving her space and trusting her completely. That trust made her feel stronger. It was like someone had handed her a new version of herself, one she had never believed could exist. They worked together for hours. Sometimes Jacob explained something. Sometimes Lyra corrected a mistake he didn't notice. and sometimes they simply worked side by side without speaking. But even in silence, she felt comfortable. The quiet between them was peaceful, not empty. As the cycle reached its middle point, Jacob sat down on a metal crate and took out a small container of food from his bag. He held it toward her. "Do you want some?" Lyra froze. On her planet, sharing food was a personal gesture, something people rarely did with strangers. She didn't know how humans saw it, but she felt shy and unsure. Jacob noticed her hesitation. "It's okay if you don't want to. I just thought maybe you were hungry." She took a small piece, holding it carefully. "Thank you," Jacob grinned. "You're welcome." For a few moments, they ate in quiet. Lyra tasted the human food slowly. It was simple, but warm, and it made her chest feel full. She watched Jacob as he talked about Earth, about blue skies, green forests, and rain that fell from the clouds like music. She had never seen anything like that. Varix 9 was metal and stone, cold and loud. The thought of a soft, natural world made her imagination bloom. "You must miss your world," she said softly. Jacob shrugged. "A little. But I like exploring. I like meeting new people. And I like learning about other cultures." He paused, then added, "And I'm glad I came here." Lyra felt a strange heat on her face. "Why?" Jacob looked at her with gentle honesty. "Because I met you." Her breath caught in her throat. She didn't know what to say. She wanted to hide her face, but she also wanted to look at him forever. These two feelings clashed inside her, making her heart feel too big for her chest. She finally whispered, "No one has ever said something like that to me." Jacob leaned back, surprised. "They should have. You're kind. You're smart. You helped me more than anyone else has." Lyra shook her head. "People do not see me that way." "That's their mistake," Jacob replied firmly. "Not yours." His confidence in her was something she had never experienced. She felt a soft warmth spread through her, like a small fire lighting inside her heart. She didn't know what this feeling was, but she knew it was connected to him, this human who treated her like she was important. As the cycle went on, more citizens passed through the yard. Some stared at them, some whispered to each other. A few looked confused that a human was speaking so casually with someone who carried a scar across her face. Lyra noticed all of this, and normally she would have shrunk into herself, but Jacob did not seem bothered. He didn't even turn to look at the people who passed by. He just kept talking to her, and because of that, she didn't step away. Instead, she stood a little straighter. Later in the cycle, when the drone was finally repaired, Jacob stretched his arms and said, "I'm done for today. Want to walk a little?" Lyra hesitated again. "Walk? With you?" "Yes," he said simply. "Only if you want to." Lyra looked around the yard. She could see a few people in the distance, staring, but then she looked back at Jacob, at the warm, patient look in his eyes. And for the first time in her life, she did not care who was watching. She nodded. They walked slowly along the edge of the city. The wind blew Lyra's hood back again, revealing her scar fully. Jacob glanced at her, not at the scar, but at her eyes, and he smiled. Lyra felt her heart trembling. It was not fear, it was something else, something heavy, warm, and soft. She had never felt anything like it. She did not know how to name it. But she knew one thing with complete certainty. Jacob had changed something inside her, and she did not want it to change back. The next few cycles passed slowly for Lyra, yet each one felt brighter than any cycle she had lived before. Every day, she walked to the cargo yard with careful steps, afraid that maybe Jacob would not be there. And every day, he greeted her with the same warm smile that made her chest feel soft and alive. Their routine became something gentle and steady. Jacob worked on the human drones, engines, and sensors. Lyra helped with the parts that needed delicate care. And even though Jacob insisted she was the one doing the real work, she never argued, because she liked hearing him say she was good at something. She liked seeing the way his eyes lit up whenever she fixed a difficult problem. On the fourth cycle since they met, something new happened. Jacob arrived late. Lyra stood near the drone pad. her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She kept looking around. The workers nearby moved as usual, not paying attention to her. But Lyra felt a strange nervousness, something she didn't understand. Was this fear? Worry? Loneliness? She didn't know, but she felt empty without him near. When Jacob finally appeared from behind a stack of cargo crates, she let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. He was wiping sweat from his forehead and muttering something about bureaucrats and long meetings. Then he saw her. His whole expression relaxed. "Hey, sorry I'm late." Lyra shook her head quickly. "It is fine." Jacob came closer and gave her a small grin. "You waited for me?" Lyra didn't know what to do with the warmth that rushed into her face. She stared at the floor and answered very quietly, "Yes." Jacob didn't tease her. He didn't laugh. He simply nodded, like her waiting meant something important to him. "Thank you," he said softly. They began working as usual, but today Jacob seemed different. He kept glancing at her when he thought she wasn't looking. He asked her more questions, not about the drones, but about her life. At first, she tried to turn away, but he spoke gently, giving her space to answer. "What do you like doing?" he asked, while tightening a bolt. Lyra paused. "Nothing special." "That can't be true. Everyone likes something." She moved her hand over the drone, checking the vibration. "I like reading." Jacob smiled. "What kind of books?" "Stories about other worlds," she said slowly. "Stories about humans." Jacob laughed softly. "Really? Why humans?" She hesitated. "Because humans sound brave, and kind, and free." Jacob leaned against the drone and folded his arms. "We try to be, but we're not perfect. Sometimes we mess up." "Everyone messes up," she replied without thinking. He looked at her with surprise. "That's very human of you to say." Lyra felt something shift inside her again. Being called human-like by an actual human felt strangely good. As they continued working, the sky above the yard dimmed. Dark clouds gathered, not the natural kind from Earth, but the artificial mist created by the energy plants of Varix 9. The wind grew stronger, carrying the sharp smell of metal and heat. Jacob squinted at the sky. "Looks like we're getting a plasma storm." Lyra nodded. "It will be strong." "Will it be dangerous?" "For humans," she said quietly. "You should stay inside until it passes." Jacob sighed. "Then I guess we'll finish for today." He packed his tools, but instead of leaving, he turned to her again. "Will you be okay?" Lyra almost smiled, though she hid it. "I live here. I am used to storms." Jacob looked like he wanted to say more, but he stopped himself. Instead, he walked away slowly, waving once before disappearing into the safety tunnel. Lyra watched him go. The storm winds howled around her, but her heart felt strangely warm. The storm came fast. Lightning flashed in the artificial sky, forming bright lines that crackled through the air. Lyra hurried home through empty streets, pulling her hood tight around her head. The wind was strong enough to push her sideways, but she kept walking. When she finally reached her room, she sat on her small bed and listened to the storm. She thought of Jacob's smile, his voice, the way he trusted her with every machine. She thought about how he never stared at her scar, how he never looked away from her eyes. She touched her cheek gently, tracing the scar with her fingers. Why did he not react like the others? Why did he look at her as if she was whole? She whispered into the silence. "What is this feeling?" She didn't have the answer, but she knew it grew stronger each time she saw him. The next cycle, she expected to find Jacob waiting for her at the yard. But when she arrived, she saw only a group of Varix 9 citizens standing in a circle, whispering sharply. Lyra froze, their faces twisted with discomfort and annoyance. She heard a voice say, "The scarred one should not be here." Another voice added, "Why does the human talk to her?" Lyra's stomach tightened. She tried to step back, but one of the citizens noticed her and pointed. "There she is." The group turned toward her. Lyra's breath caught. She wanted to run, but her legs refused to move. Then she heard another voice, one that cut through the noise like a bright beam. "Is there a problem here?" Jacob stepped out from behind the drone station, his expression calm but firm. He walked toward Lyra and stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence. The citizens looked uncomfortable. One of them said, "Human, you should not speak with her. She is marked." Jacob raised an eyebrow. "Marked? You mean her scar?" They hesitated. "It means she is unstable. Unfit. You should keep distance." Jacob crossed his arms. "I decide who I stand near. And she's more stable than half the people I've met here." Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to disappear, yet at the same time, she wanted to stay next to him forever. The citizens muttered among themselves and slowly walked away, choosing not to argue further with a human. When they were gone, Jacob turned to her. "Are you okay?" She nodded faintly. They always talk like that." "I am used to it." Jacob frowned. "You shouldn't have to be used to it." Lyra lowered her eyes. "It does not matter." Jacob stepped a little closer, his voice softer. "It matters to me." Her breath trembled. She looked up at him, and his eyes met hers with a warmth that made her chest feel fragile. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was different this time. Full, warm, and alive. Jacob cleared his throat gently. "Do you want to take a break from work today? Maybe walk somewhere quieter?" Lyra nodded. She did not trust her voice to speak. They left the cargo yard and walked through the older parts of the city, places where few people went. The old metal streets were cracked and worn, but quieter. Lyra felt safer there, especially with Jacob walking beside her. As they walked, Jacob spoke softly. "You know, scars aren't something bad. Back home, a person's story matters more than their face." Lyra touched her scar again. "My story is not important." Jacob stopped walking and faced her. "That's not true." Lyra blinked in surprise. "You survived something," Jacob said. "Something that hurt you. Something that stayed with you. That means you're strong. And honestly," he paused, his eyes gentle, "I think your scar makes you look brave." No one had ever said anything like that to her. The words struck her like a soft shockwave, flooding her heart with warmth she didn't know how to handle. She felt tears forming, but she quickly wiped them before they could fall. "Why are you so kind to me?" Jacob smiled faintly. "Because you deserve kindness." Lyra looked at him for a long moment. She didn't look away this time. She let herself see him clearly, the human who stood beside her, who defended her, who spoke to her like she mattered. Her heart was trembling, but not from fear. She suddenly understood the feeling that had been growing inside her since the first day they met. She had fallen in love with him, quietly, softly, completely, without even realizing when it happened. She didn't say it out loud, but she knew. And as Jacob continued walking beside her, she followed with a heart that felt full for the first time in her life. The day after the attack, the colony of Norathi Prime felt different. The air looked clearer, as if the storm that had passed over the land had also brushed away some hidden weight in the hearts of its people. For the first time in many years, Lyra walked through the main street without lowering her head. She kept her hands close to her body, still shy. But she walked with a quiet strength that everyone could see. Her scar, running along her left cheek like a silver mark, caught the sunlight. It did not look ugly anymore. It looked like a memory that had shaped her life. Jace walked beside her, not too close, not too far. He let her move at her own pace. He noticed every time she hesitated, and every time he gently told her, "It's okay. You're doing well." The people around them stared, but their gaze had changed. They no longer looked at her like she was dangerous. They looked at her as if she was someone they should have noticed long ago. A few children ran ahead and stopped to watch her pass. One little Norathi girl stepped forward and whispered, "You were brave yesterday." Lyra blinked, unsure how to reply. Compliments were new to her. She bent down carefully and nodded. "Thank you," she said softly. The child bowed in excitement and ran back to her parents. Jace watched the moment with pride. Only yesterday Lyra had almost died in the sand. Only yesterday she had believed she was worth nothing. Now children were thanking her. But inside, he knew the world was not suddenly peaceful. The enemy ship had not attacked alone. There were more threats out there. Norathi Prime had become a target because humans were helping the colony. And rumors said that more alien factions hated that alliance. Later that day, the Council of Norathi called a meeting. Lyra had never entered the council hall before. It was a circular room built from stone, with glowing lines carved into the walls. Elders sat at the front, their long robes falling around them like flowing water. When Lyra stepped inside, the room fell quiet. Elder Shan, the oldest among them, stood slowly. His voice trembled with age, but his words were firm. Yesterday, we were saved by two people. One of them is a human. The other is a Norathi, whom we neglected for too long. Lyra felt her heart beat hard. She looked down, but Jace leaned close and murmured, "You deserve to be here." Elder Shan continued, "Lyra, you risked your life. You protected the colony even though we had turned away from you. That scar you carry is not a curse. It is a sign of survival. And we are ashamed we did not see this earlier." Lyra raised her head slowly. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I only did what I believed was right." "We know," Shan said, "and that is why we wish to honor you. You will be offered a place in the Guardian unit if you choose. Your strength and your spirit would serve our people well." Gasps filled the room. Many had never imagined Lyra joining the Guardians. She herself had once thought that dream impossible. Her fingers trembled. She did not answer immediately. She looked at Jace, as if asking what she should do. He gave a small smile. "This is your story," he said. "You choose the path." Lyra breathed slowly. "I am proud to accept," she said. The whole hall murmured in approval. It was the first time her voice had been welcomed by so many. After the meeting, they stepped outside. The sunlight was warm, and the wind carried the faint scent of glowing plants from the valley. Lyra felt lighter than she ever had. But she also felt nervous. Everything was changing fast. Jace noticed her silence. "Too much?" "A little," she admitted. "I never thought they would see me this way." "You earned it," he said. "You didn't change for them. They changed because of you." She looked at him. His eyes were bright. Not because of pride, but because he truly meant what he said. She wondered how someone like him had appeared in her life at exactly the right moment. She wondered why he cared about her more than anyone else ever had. Later that evening, they walked along the ridge overlooking the valley. The sky was painted with soft purple clouds, and the twin moons were rising slowly. Lyra sat on a large stone, while Jace stood nearby, watching the horizon. "You know," he said, "back on Earth, people tell stories about warriors who rise from nothing. Humans call them heroes. You remind me of them." Lyra looked surprised. "I am not a hero. You saved me," he said simply. "You saved all of us." She looked down nervously. "I was afraid. I still am." "That's what courage is," he replied. "Doing something even when fear is loud." She closed her eyes for a moment. The wind brushed her hair, carrying the scent of dust and flowers. She remembered all the nights she had cried alone, believing she was a burden. She remembered touching her scar with shame. Now, for the first time, she touched it with a different feeling. Not pride, not yet, but acceptance. "Jace," she said quietly, "why did you help me?" "Many humans avoid those who look different." He sat on the stone beside her. "Because when I first saw you, you looked angry, but your eyes looked lonely. I know that feeling. I didn't want you to carry it alone." She turned her face away for a moment, trying to steady her breath. She felt a warmth in her chest that was unfamiliar, but pleasant. No one else ever cared. "I do," he said gently. "And I don't plan to stop." She froze. His words were simple, but they touched something deep inside her. Her heartbeat grew louder. She looked at him slowly, her eyes full of confused emotion. "You care about me?" she asked, softly. "More than I have cared about anyone in a long time." Lyra felt something break inside her, not in a painful way, but like a wall finally falling. Her hands trembled. She whispered, "You saw my scar and didn't look away." "Why would I?" he said. "It's part of you. And everything about you is worth seeing." Tears gathered in her eyes. She wiped them quickly, embarrassed. But Jace gently placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't pull away this time. "Lyra," he said, "you don't have to hide anymore." She whispered, "Because of you?" He smiled softly. "Because of you. I just reminded you." Her breath shook. She looked at him fully now. Not hiding her scar. Not hiding her fear. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe something impossible, that someone, a human from a different world, could see her as more than her scar. She leaned toward him slowly, not close enough to touch, but close enough that the space between them felt warm and full of meaning. "I think," she whispered, "I started trusting you the moment you looked at me without fear." "And I think," he replied, "I started falling for you the moment you refused to let me walk alone." The wind grew softer. The moons rose higher. The valley lights flickered like stars on the ground. Jace sat beside her quietly, letting the moment settle. Lyra felt her heart open, gently and carefully. For the first time in her life, she did not feel shunned. She did not feel lesser. She felt seen. She felt chosen. And as they sat together under the twin moons, she realized something powerful. She cared for him too, more than she had words for. She was not ready to say everything aloud yet, but she knew the path her heart had taken. One day, she would tell him. For now, she simply leaned her head lightly against his shoulder, letting the moonlight fall over her scar like a silver blessing. And Jace, without saying a word, knew exactly what it meant.